Hello, this is Chuck Solomon, and welcome to the Candidate Experience Podcast, where we focus on the job candidate journey from apply to onboard and the space in between. Let's get started. You care about the candidate experience, but have you ever wondered exactly how to bring your company to that next level and offer a world-class experience to your candidates? It's not easy. Fortunately, Candidate.fyi can help. Their solution guides candidates through your hiring journey, enhancing transparency and communication at every touch point. You'll also gain valuable insights on what's working and what's not with your hiring process. Best of all, it integrates directly with your ATS. Head on over to Candidate.fyi and see how to transform your company's candidate experience today. Welcome to the Unrestricted Free Agent episode, where Byron Jackson, former employer branding manager for Subway, is my special guest. Listen to the insights he shares on how to enhance the candidate experience and improve your company's employer brand. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please subscribe and do share with others. Want to comment, discuss, provide feedback, you can do so via LinkedIn or via the form on our website, www.thecx.xyz. I thank you for listening, and here's my interview. Hey, Byron, how are you today?
I'm good, Chuck. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Is it as hot in Miami as it is in North Carolina today?
Oh my gosh. Yes, it is. And we have officially hit summer. That means humidity at record highs. So,
oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to sort of vent to you about that, but I'm like, I can't talk to a guy that lives in South Florida about heat and humidity in North Carolina. It just doesn't work. So how did you get into this recruiting people, talent kind of business?
I was lucky enough to be introduced into this profession about 4 years ago. When I was looking for a job, I was working with a local recruiter here in Miami. And he mentioned that he was working with a company that he thought I would be a good fit for in terms of my skill set, in terms of some of the roles that he had in mind. I went through the interview process. Thankfully enough, they liked me and they hired me. Upon getting hired, my first 3 to 6 months, I was kind of in the training scenario, I guess you would
Sure.
like to call it, where I was just working with some other individuals on my team and seeing how the organization worked and what it was that the day-to-day responsibilities were. My official title was Employment Program Manager, meaning that I was responsible for the different employment programs related to the Subway hiring experience. We had an in-house ATS, as well as we had programs related to payroll, to your work opportunity tax credits, telemedicine program, discount-resistant shoes. So we had a lot of different programs related to employment that were available for franchisees. In terms of how I got into the recruiting mindset, about 6 months into the role, my then director, Brian Wheeler, called me into his office and said, "Hey, Byron, I noticed that you're responding to franchisees via email, but I think it'd be a good opportunity for you to really get on the phones and start listening to what they have to say, and in terms of what they're looking for when they say that they're looking for employment help."
Sure.
So I got on the phone with a couple of franchisees, and after a while, you really get an understanding of what it's like to be a franchisee or to be one of the hiring managers that works for a franchisee. And you're, looking for employment. The unique thing about my role and about the organization is Subway is 100% franchisee owned.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no corporate owned store. So there's really no guidelines in terms of how to hire somebody. So it's really up to the individual franchisee and whatever type of operational programs they want to put in place. So, when they contacted us at IPC, then that was my opportunity to start looking at it from a strategic standpoint And,
Sure.
given that I was on the phone with them, understanding what their needs were and what programs would best fit the needs that they had.
Gotcha. And you're no longer with Subway, or it's actually IPC, but no one's heard of IPC, but everyone's heard of Subway. So
Correct. Yes, no,
yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, I was a casualty of COVID, but I had a great experience at IPC, and the franchisees that I was able to develop relationships with. I really admire them because it gives you a glimpse as to what it means to really be a small business owner.
gotcha. So you're an unrestricted free agent, not in athletics, not swinging sports, but in the employer branding realm. You're available. I'm I'm sorry for your loss, but I think other doors will open. I, as well, was a casualty of COVID back in April. I think when we talked earlier, I think we both of our positions were eliminated around the same time. So I felt your pain, but I think there are greener pastures ahead of you.
I agree.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're recording this on June 10th, and a lot's been happening since Memorial Day here in our country, and we've had the tragic death of George Floyd and protesting in not just the U.S. but globally, and many companies have spoken out in solidarity against racism, or really against any isms that are out there. But there's also, companies that have not made a statement about that. Could you share how you think that might impact a company's ability to attract candidates to hire?
Yeah, no, I think this is a really relevant topic. It is something that as an employer branding professional, it's one of those things that before everything happened, when you were trying to cultivate the story of why employer branding is important to your organization, this scenario highlights that right on hits the nail right on the head, so to say.
Sure.
Um, Especially now with the amount of unemployed professionals and the amount of job seekers in the market that are looking at companies. Companies now have a bigger and brighter spotlight on them than they've ever had, in my opinion, in the past. So to me, and for the record, I am a young Black professional. I do think that it is something that employers should definitely not just put out a statement, but also take a look and evaluate what's within their culture, what's within their values, and then what action steps are they taking to utilize and incorporate diversity, inclusion, these types of things. Unfortunately, with the incident related to George Floyd, it has kind of not kind of, it's opened up the conversation for individuals, like you mentioned, globally, to see that, there are systemic issues within our society related to racism, sexism, ageisms, like you mentioned, all the isms. And if you're an employer and you're not addressing these things, I do think that candidates now will be more aware of is that an organization that I really want to work for the next 3 to 5 years, because that's the usual life cycle of a candidate these days. So, if you're not putting out a statement, if you're not putting together some sort of diversity and inclusion programs, or you're not utilizing this time to educate yourself, listen to your employees, maybe listen to your customers, your stakeholders, or just your local community. I do think that candidates will be able to see through the corporate rhetoric, as we like to say, and just say that, okay, well, they were just doing it just to fall in line, but they're really
Sure.
not about inclusion, diversity, and um, you know, um, eliminating various systemic obstacles and barriers that are in place, as I mentioned earlier. So,
Right.
um,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, thanks for sharing your comments on that. I think companies that aren't saying anything are saying something in their
yeah,
silence. I think silence is not an option here. I I've been interviewing as well, and that's actually one of the questions I've been asking in my interviews is this very sort of question I asked you is like, what does the company feel? Has the company put out a statement on this? And interesting. I had this conversation with someone earlier today about a company that I'm considering joining, and I said, has the company done anything? And the person I talked to said, no, they haven't. They're just unsure what to say, and but they're working on it. They're figuring it out, and so I thought that was authentic and genuine stuff. Another company I talked to earlier today actually said, yeah, they have, and their CEO has come out loud and clear about this. Like, we don't stand for any of this stuff, and so it's tragic, Mr. Floyd. The silver lining, I think, is these conversations are happening. Another conversation, I'm in a group that met on Monday, and we usually meet for an hour, and we spent nearly half of the time talking about this very topic and what people could do. And it was mostly white people in the room. Actually, it was 100% white people in the virtual room. And what we were talking about, like, really, what can we do? And I think the answer really is to keep talking, not just keep talking, but actually listening, opening your ears and listening. So, anyways, thanks for sharing on that. Let's dive into some other stuff, candidate journey and candidate experience related. Was there a challenge that you as a company faced? Wanted to change some aspect of the candidate experience, and what did you all do about it?
yeah. So, we did have a few challenges. Once I got comfortable within my role, as I mentioned, after about 6 months, I started looking around and looking at things from a hiring manager perspective or franchisee perspective. And then I kind of put myself back in the role of, okay, if I was going to apply for a job, what would I be looking for in this time and age? So, one of the biggest challenges, there's two main challenges, but one of them was the actual application in and of itself. As mentioned, Subway's 100% franchisee owned. A lot of franchisees are older franchisees, or if they're not older franchisees, they're just utilizing the paper applications that
Right.
the corporate office had provided to them. And it's great that you have a paper application, but if you are working in a sandwich shop and you have 4 people that are online during rush hour, during lunchtime, and somebody comes in during that time period and says, hey, I'm interested in a job. Are you guys hiring? You can't afford to have somebody step off of the line and then go ahead and hand somebody a paper application,
Right.
explain to them what fields that they need are required, and then kind of explain to them the whole deal about what it's like to work at Subway, so on and so forth. So one of the things was just changing the mindset of the franchisees to move from that paper to a digital. And we have,
Sure.
My Subway Career. We have a career website that the candidates could go ahead and apply to. But one thing that we found was that the length of the application in of itself was a deterrent.
Sure.
So, within the Subway, the QSR, quick service restaurant space, these are entry level, no experience, little education needed jobs. So you're competing not only within your own industry as other companies are, but you're creating across industries. You're competing with retail. You're competing with, nowadays the digital age where you can have, a 16-year-old kid go on his iPad and become a YouTuber and, make a couple $100 a month posting
Right.
YouTube videos, and they don't have to get off the couch, so to say, as you and I did to go get their
Right.
first summer job or, that first job during the winter break. So we identified that the length of the application needed to be shortened. So we went ahead and we worked with our development team to put in the option so that the franchisee or the hiring manager could shorten the length of the application. So that was one of the challenges that we experienced. And actually, speaking with a couple of the franchisees shortly after we did the launch of it, one of the franchisees said it made a huge difference. They went to the short form application and they saw the number of completed applications increase by like almost 40% within a week.
Wow. That's
So,
great. Great news.
yeah. And, also to think of it in terms of where are we in society, right? So nowadays, everything is social media and, we are a quick attention span. So, you're on Instagram, your Instagram story is a minute and a half. If you want to do anything longer, you have to go to a long form platform like on the Facebook story or whatever it may be. So if societal habits are changing, which means that customer habits are changing or just regular consumer habits are changing, then you have to take a look at what are your practices that you have related to the candidate. If you have, these long drawn out applications or interview processes, especially for the positions that we're hiring for, the chances are you're not going to get that candidate. It's just, something that's not there.
Right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, and I was just going to say the other part that kind of ties into that is we also created a welcome to the team brochure. Mm-hmm. So if somebody was interested in working at a Subway, going back to the paper versus digital, they could hand them this welcome to the team brochure, and the brochure listed the different benefits and perks that would be available to them, so that they knew what they were getting as a Subway employee, so that they weren't just saying, okay, well, I'm just going to get paid. That we were really trying to brand Subway as an employer of choice. So, gotcha. Those are the two biggest challenges related to the candidate experience.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can recall, companies, when they had to hire, they used to place classified ads in the newspaper. And I suppose that's still done on occasion as well. But we have definitely had, a transformation. I mean, you pointed it out in the sort of application process, but also, in just how people learn about jobs. I mean, I think that we're probably even just scratching the surface of this right now. Like, I think it's just going to get more and more digital. I mean, what do you think? Do you think we're going back to paper?
No, I do. I'm in 100% agreement with you. The digital revolution is here, and it's here to stay.
Sure.
With technology, I think. I remember when cell phones were just becoming popularized amongst the masses, so to say. And back then you had your Nokia or your Ericsson phone, and you were playing Snake, and sending text messages, and now you can do pretty much everything and anything from your phone. So as the technology continues to evolve, I think that the candidate experience is going to be more mobile enabled, and your digital presence is going to be your billboard, so to say. Because as you mentioned, you can go on any publication now from your phone. So if your application isn't mobile responsive, if it's not mobile friendly, or if you just don't have a mobile presence, period, where people can learn about your organization, learn about the position that you're potentially offering, they're just going to go somewhere else, because we all know that, there's tons of ads out there on all these various platforms. So yeah, mobile is definitely the way to go now.
I agree with you. Is there, something that you had planned to do and hadn't implemented yet in, for 2020 that was going to sort of improve the candidate experience at Subway?
Yeah, so actually it kind of goes back to the whole digital revolution. We were working with one of our vendor partners in implementing a video interview service. So
Wow.
again, it was just, everything is on your phone nowadays. Yes, it's great that you want somebody to come into your restaurant and you want to be able to sit down with them for 5, 10 minutes and ask them some questions and, see if you can build a rapport with them and, ask, some questions that you feel might be a little more intimate in person versus online. But especially with COVID coming around in the last 3 months, everything seems to be going digital, whether it's
Yep.
medicine and video conferencing, work from home, so on and so forth. So yeah, we had the opportunity to work with one of our vendor partners and we were beta testing a video interview service that they had that we were going to incorporate into the application process. So um, this would allow for the franchisee and the hiring manager to go ahead and create basically a virtual interview of
Hmm.
themselves. They had a subset of questions that they would be able to ask. They would go ahead and then send that interview link to whoever the interested candidate was. So if the candidate applied online and the hiring manager wanted to interview them, they would just go ahead and send them an email with the link in it. And then the candidate would have, whatever time frame to go ahead and to respond to that video interview.
Sure.
The interviews could be taped or they could also have the feature to go live. So you could do a one-on-one interview as well.
Was the plan to do recorded interviews where you send the questions and the candidate records their answers, or was the plan to do live ones, or
So the
both,
plan,
or both?
yeah, a little bit of both. I
Okay.
I was pushing for a mix of the two. The brand was in management was leaning more towards the recorded, and I understand why. Because for legal purposes, liability, you don't want to potentially ask the wrong questions where candidate could feel litigious if they wanted to, and then go ahead and sue.
Right.
But I do feel like there is power, and especially now, as I mentioned with COVID, Zoom conference calls, video calls have become thing of the norm now. So being able to see somebody and really experience them face to face, I thought would be a real opportunity, especially in the business, of making sandwiches where you're in a customer facing position. You want to be
Right.
able to see how a candidate responds under pressure. Yes, it's not that hard to make sandwiches, but you might have to deal with a difficult customer or you might have to deal in an adverse situation.
Right.
And you want to be able to see what the facial reactions of the candidate are. How do they handle certain situations? And then also, too, if, and I'll be frank, we all know that you can, as I call it, gamify an interview if you want, right? You can prepare for it, you can rehearse the answers.
Right.
But if you ask somebody something that's on the spot, you want to see, are they a quick thinker? Are they able to, are they a problem solver or do they just freeze under pressure? So
Right.
it was a mix of both, but the brand was leaning more towards the recorded interview.
Gotcha. I'm just envisioning that the hiring managers on the line. It's a lunch hour, and they're doing like a live interview, and they're like, "So, tell me about why you want to come work at Subway." And then they turn to a customer and say, "Would you like mustard or mayo on that?" This is what I'm envisioning there. So, but I'm assuming that the hiring managers would be not doing this during lunch hour.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We were putting together guidelines as to, how to utilize the service and making sure that they were in the right environment. So similar, again, going back to the whole COVID, similar to COVID, right? Making sure that the dog's not barking, that the kids
Right.
aren't screaming in the background. You want to try to be as professional as possible. And that's also one of the reasons why I like the services because you want to be able to see, is the person professional enough to know, hey, I need to do this in a quiet, setting, even though you might be
Right.
living in a house with 5 other people. Can you go lock yourself somewhere for 10 minutes and just do a quick video chat? Because if
Right.
the candidate has the wherewithal to do so, then they understand what professionalism is.
Right. That's true. I'll admit to you that so this is audio recording, but I have recorded in a closet before, and I've also recorded in a bathroom before because I'm not doing that now. I'm in my home office, but those are the only two quiet places I could find. Anyways, um, good stuff here. If if you had, one tip that you could offer to a company of how they could do something to improve the candidate journey and the candidate experience, do you have a tip for companies?
Yes, kind of goes back to our conversation in terms of technology.
Hmm.
Look at your technology. What are you doing to incorporate technology into the application interview candidate experience? Um, is it relevant to your industry? Is it relevant to the role? Um, who are you going after? Who's your target audience? Who's your target candidate? Again, being that we were hiring sandwich artists and managers, and normally between the ages of 16 and 25, the demographic was skewed to younger, more technologically affluent users.
Sure.
But our hiring managers might be an older franchisee who's more technologically averse. So they might
Sure.
want to stick to the traditional way of doing an interview. And, you have to be able to look at who it is that you're trying to bring into the organization, what your culture is, really define that. And then, one of the things that I used to try to do all the time as we were working on different parts of our hiring experience was, I would go to one of the other departments within the building and just ask one of the developers, let's say, that wasn't on my development team and say, hey, go apply to this store and tell me what you think. Or, hey, take this assessment and let me know, provide your feedback. Because if you get somebody who has no knowledge of what your objective is, and, they haven't been sitting in on the conversations and the emails, and you just get their raw and unedited opinion, you'd be surprised as the insights that you could gather from them, especially again if it's somebody who's either outside your target demographic or even if it's somebody inside your target demographic. Sometimes what I would do is I would just be on the street, well, not on the street, but we had a large corporate complex, and around lunchtime, everybody goes out for lunch.
Right.
And I would just ask random individuals, hey, I'm working on this project. Do you mind taking 2 minutes while we walk to the restaurant down here and, grab a quick bite to eat and apply? And, they wouldn't know anything about me or who I would, I'd have to give them a little detail. But yeah, just getting that outside opinion, because sometimes you're so stuck in the role, you're so stuck in the project that you only see things through your eyes, and you're not taking a step back to say, okay, what is a complete fresh set of eyes? How do they see this? What's their interpretation of this? And, utilizing that feedback. Again, I go back to my experience at Subway, because, Subway is 24,000 locations nationwide. The candidate experience that we want to have is we try to make it a uniform candidate experience nationwide, excuse me. But
Sure.
we understand that there are cultural differences based upon the location of the sandwiches, based upon the location of the restaurants. So, somebody in Miami might take the application experience and they might say, well, where's the option to switch to a Spanish language application?
Right.
And then we realized that, oh, it wasn't as prominent as we thought it was, because, yeah, maybe there are candidates in other locations that are looking to apply and they would be great candidates, but they're intimidated because English isn't their first language.
Right.
So we had to go back and make the language button bigger and more prominent. We would have to go ahead and, as we're talking about now, diversity and inclusion, add more diverse pictures on the candidate website, making sure that, we had women represented, that we had some older individuals represented, because
Right.
in certain markets, it was an older demographic that was working in the sandwich shop. So, yeah, just grabbing an outside perspective and utilizing them for feedback, I think is something that is a huge asset when you can use it.
totally agree. And, thanks for sharing all that. Byron, if people wanted to get a hold of you after this airs, how could they do so?
Sure, I'm pretty easy to find. It's Byron Jackson on LinkedIn, Byron. And then if you're looking to email me, you can email me byronjack305 at gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to correspond with you. If you have any questions about employer branding, recruitment, marketing, I do have a little bit of knowledge, especially from the franchise level, working with the brand and at the franchisee network. So I'd be more than happy to connect.
Thanks for your time today, Byron.
Thanks so much, Chuck. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Candidate Experience podcast. You can reach out to us via our website, thecx.xyz. That's thecx.xyz.